Have you ever felt like your period just won't end? And maybe it's dragging on for 8, 9, or even 10 days. And everyone's telling you your period should only last about 5 days. So then you start wondering, what's wrong with me? Well, you're not alone. Prolonged bleeding is a common concern, but here's the truth: it's not always what you think. It's often a signal from your hormones or your overall health, and it's not just bad luck or any number of reasons that other people kind of fill their head in. So don't think about that. Let's think about today's episode, okay? So hello and welcome to Feel Better, Feel Great. Episode number 172, the real reason your period lasts 8 days. And it's not what you think. In each episode, we dive into holistic and functional medicine to empower you with the knowledge you need to lead a healthier, happier life. I'm your host, Dr. Andrea McSwain. In today's episode, I'll walk you through the real reasons periods last too long, when to worry, and natural strategies to help shorten and balance your cycle. If you are new to me, please like, subscribe, and click the bell for this channel. Also, look for our email so you can join our email list. Please remember that this is educational health information only in this podcast. It is not me becoming your doctor, but please seek the advice of a physician with any questions you may have regarding a medical concern or health objectives. But I do want to give you some education so that when you walk into the doctor's office, you're like, I am ready. We are going to get this figured out. Okay. And I want to give you some other tools that are available to you too that will really help you get this done so you can start living that happier, healthier life. All right. So, first of all, what's normal and what's not? All right. So, a typical period is kind of 3 to 7 days. Most women fall around 5 days. And that's because we are in this kind of very unified rhythm that makes it last about 5 days. But if you're bleeding longer than 7 days, that is considered prolonged bleeding. And I have met many women who have had bleeding for 8, 10, 12, 14, 21 days. And we just know that our patterns are off, and that's the case. Our rhythm is off. Okay. So it's important to recognize that true prolonged bleeding is steady flow for 8 or more days. Right. So that is important. I want you to hear about a patient. Her name is Sarah. She is 37 years old. She had 8-day periods and they leave her exhausted. She feels like she is climbing up a mountain for the rest of the month trying to recover. Then she finally feels better, and then her 8-day period happens again. And this is a cycle of exhaustion and maybe a little bit of recovery, and that becomes her base pattern. She's exhausted, and then she starts to get a little bit better, and then she gets exhausted again. And she just can't catch a break, right? But that's not bad luck. There are reasons for it. So what's happened to Sarah once she started actually receiving treatment, okay, I'm going to tell you what I did with her so that you can kind of understand the process. All right. Because if this is you, you kind of want to know what's going on, understand the health journey, look at how we can change those patterns. Okay. So this is all for you. Okay. So thinking about Sarah and thinking about its relevance in your life. So her lab showed low progesterone and thyroid that was sluggish. Okay, so we tested those. We tested some other things too, but those are what the results showed. All right, so in our testing, right, we see how we can have an understanding of what's happening with the hormones, what's happening with the organs, right, the endocrine organs. So, we made changes to her. Better sleep routine, critical for healing. Magnesium and B vitamins, thyroid support, and stress management. Okay. So within 6 months, her periods were down to 5 or 6 days. She wasn't stuck in that, exhaustion, climbing a mountain to recover a little bit, and then exhaustion again, and barely making it back to just having a little bit energy. In fact, her energy came back and she felt like herself again. I see people and I hear people say that, and it's like, wow, I feel like myself again. That's such a good feeling. Okay, so what do I want you to take away from that? Long periods are not just about the bleeding. They impact mood, energy, quality of life, right? And all those things have cascade, problems that come from after that. So that's the main type I want to talk about, right? So that's actually like steady bleeding. And sometimes people will have spotting before and after your period. And if you do, I want you to still think about this situation because it's a lot of relevance to you still. Because bleeding is bleeding. But when you have heavy, consistent bleeding, you're going to have more likely hormone imbalances that are more severe, and you're going to have more likely consequences. And as a result, we start looking at how, every month just kind of gets harder and harder and harder. And that's not what we want, right? We want every month to get better and stronger and more capable and organized and happier and healthier. So again, I want to walk through a few more details that are really important in determining what is happening and then action items that ended up helping Sarah. Okay, first, step one, find the problem. Find the problem. So this is often called diagnostics, right? Um, so I looked at her hormone values, okay, and then her cycle patterns, right? She needed to track her cycles, note how long her bleeding was, how heavy, and any spotting. Now, knowledge is really powerful, and pattern recognition is absolutely critical in one's health. Patterns really matter, okay? Just know that for the rest of your life. Okay, so again, I looked at her hormone values and her cycle patterns, and then I looked at her nutrient levels. And because she's my patient, I reviewed the ultrasound images. And I didn't just rely on the report. So this is a really important caveat, kind of a patient buyer beware. If your doctor is looking at your gyne ultrasound for prolonged bleeding and all you're hearing is kind of standard run-of-the-mill image results, they probably are not reading the report. And if that's the case, you might want to reach out to me because I do a consult on imaging for gyne images because I'm really good at it and you get a lot of information and I actually show you what the problems are. It's like fantastic. And I can't wait to do that if you're interested. So, okay, so for diagnostics, again, I was looking for a root cause or causes of her prolonged periods, right? So first, obviously, it's going to be a hormone imbalance, right? We know that because your periods are that report card and they show us where there's a problem. So too much estrogen without enough progesterone, right? So she had low progesterone. So in that case, the lining of the uterus gets too thick. So bleeding lasts longer, okay? And low progesterone by itself, again, it doesn't balance estrogen and the bleeding drags on, okay? Thyroid issues, so the thyroid can be overactive or underactive. So it can be hypo, and that can stretch out your periods. And that can stretch out her periods, which she had thyroid sluggishness in that case. So Sarah was dealing with that. And then another one that's really important to consider is insulin resistance. Insulin is a hormone. It's about metabolism, blood sugar regulation, corresponds with stress, right? And insulin also makes estrogen higher because estrogen helps us store our stress better. And that's why women kind of store their stress in a different way than men because of the estrogen. So we're more prone as women to have insulin resistance to kind of store that stress to make us hardier in times of problems. Okay, but then that can fuel heavier, longer cycles because it's a hormone issue. It's a hormone imbalance issue. So the other thing we did, as I mentioned, is I looked at Sarah's ultrasound and I looked at her ultrasound images. As an OB-GYN, I was trained, I was fascinated with it, and I've been reading my images of basically all parts of the body, but particularly gyne, since 2005. And so I love doing it. So, okay, so, what are structural issues in the uterus? Okay, fibroids. These are non-cancerous growths that cause heavy bleeding or long periods because they are like a rock kind of stuck in there. And then that offsets how the uterus can contract. Polyps. Okay, polyps can just cause a lot of bleeding because polyps are really fragile material, fragile tissue. And then endometriosis And that is where glandular tissue is outside the uterus. And then adenomyosis means the glandular tissue has gotten into the muscle of the uterus. And that is where uterine tissue is growing where it shouldn't. And that definitely leads to abnormal cycles. And that is really important. And all those things are very obvious on ultrasound. However, sometimes those reports are inaccurate, so buyer beware. Okay, other factors, can't say it enough, stress. Okay, cortisol will throw off ovulation. That's a big deal. I talk about it regularly. And then perimenopause, which um, during the time in our late 30s, kind of 40s, when there's a lot of stress factors, that word perimenopause will kind of seem like it fits. But I'll tell you that it's really about stress. Okay. And then the stress makes the hormones fluctuate wildly. And then we get these imbalances, and then people kind of block us into perimenopause. So just think about that. And then, of course, there's certain medications that thin our blood, and then some IUDs will affect the uterine lining because they're inside the uterus. Okay. So I thought about all those factors with Sarah. And then the second element, right, is to do the work. So in the first element, we do the diagnostics, we find the answers. And in the second component, we do the work. So that's nutrition. Obviously, that's a really important element of lifestyle factor. So there's diet, movement, stress, sleep, relationships. Those are the lifestyle factors. And then, of course, supplementation that not only helps with symptoms, but also helps organize the body. So these are natural ways to shorten your periods and balance hormones. Okay, so nutrition is really important because nutrition is often the details of how you could use food as medicine. It's amazing. It's where the biochemistry of the plants and animals, right, get into our body and in a way that we can actually help ourselves heal. But nutrition is varied based on what's going on with the diagnostics. So in this case, we would definitely be talking about iron-rich foods. Okay, so plant-based, or if you're eating iron-rich foods, which usually is grass-fed beef, you want to replace the iron that's been lost from bleeding. So iron gets lost in bleeding. Okay, another one is you want to reduce that inflammation. So these hormone imbalances can cause a lot of inflammation. So that's your omega-3s. Okay, so that's nuts, seeds, fish, and then fruits and veggies. All right, and then focusing on helping process estrogens. So foods can actually help us process estrogens. And that's a really, really important deal. So berries, cruciferous vegetables, and cabbage. But we want to be conscientious of how much estrogen we have in some of the relationships. So that's why nutrition is also really helped out when you have these lab tests done. So root cause lab testing for your hormones is a really critical element to understanding how these things work. Okay. And then, of course, you just have to recognize, as we all do, that when you're using crutches for energy and mood, that they actually become their own problem. So that really means cutting down on alcohol, caffeine, and processed sugar. But remember, replace those things with some berries, right? And some fruits and veggies, maybe some green powder in your water, maybe a dilute protein shake. Don't just go without, okay? Those crutches are there for a reason. So alcohol, caffeine, and processed sugar are crutches. And what we want to do is get underneath those crutches. So again, replace, don't just pull them out. All right. And then, of course, lifestyle things that I recommended to Sarah, and these things can really help. One of them, remember, when you have low iron because you're having excess bleeding, you're going to be tired. And that means it's really going to be hard to exercise. So some people will think about exercise with oxygen therapy. And that's why oxygen bars can be very helpful as well. Believe it or not, it's a medical grade oxygen tank, and you put it in your nose and you get oxygen, and that makes you feel better. And then exercise with oxygen therapy is just that, but then you're exercising. So you're giving yourself that oxygen at a time where you have a higher demand. And you can work with your doctor on that. That's a really good element to consider. So exercise with oxygen therapy. That is a big one. Of course, prioritizing stress reduction. And I don't mean just like getting to the yoga class and watching the videos and stuff. I mean actually like checking in with yourself, right? Just like, oh, I need to like let that stress go for a minute. Like, oh, look at the sky. Look at just look around, just feel the earth with your feet, um, just take a moment to listen to the sounds around you, right? Maybe it's stillness, and that's pretty nice too. But it's more than just doing the stress reduction techniques. It's actually appreciating how much stress plays into just spinning us, right? And then how much of that goes directly into hormone imbalance, because stress puts us in hormone imbalance. Okay. And then, of course, sleep is not negotiable. Your body's hormones reset at night, your digestion resets at night, everything resets at night. So, what's the point? Sleep is not negotiable. Absolutely not. Set that timer, get in bed by 10 if that's 10 or 11, 9:30, and see what things change. Give that 30 days. And that's what we did with Sarah. Started saying sleep is not negotiable. Sleep is not negotiable. I can't do one more thing. I need to rest and sleep. Okay. And then supplements for Sarah. Now remember, this is general guidance, not prescriptions, but I used FemBalance Forte. Okay. And it has a lot of ways to help raise progesterone and balance cycles. I used optimal magnesium to improve the blood vessels, and that's a structural issue, and then cause the muscles to be more organized in their contraction. So, really good structurally. Be calm, calms the nervous system, regulates hormones, improves sleep. That's important. Okay, dim in estrocor. So this helps the body break down estrogen more effectively. It's what's concentrated from those vegetables, those cruciferous vegetables. And then iron. So here's an important point about iron. Okay, iron is, a lot of times we'll say like, well, unless your hemoglobin is low, like under 12 or under 11, or sometimes people wait till 10, don't do that. Okay, just pick your best iron. So there's food-based iron. Next, more intense thing is plant-based liquid iron. Okay, and that is what I highly recommend, plant-based liquid iron. It is my important tip in the clinic. Okay, and it's because it's plant-based. So if your body doesn't need it, it's not going to store it. So that's important. And the other thing is, you're going to know when you want it and when you don't want it. So listen to this. If it tastes good, then you want it because you need it. All right. And then you drink it, you follow the recommended dosage on the label. And then when you are like, oh my God, this stuff is like, does not taste good, then you put it in the cabinet. Okay. And then every month as it returns to your birthday, so whatever number your birthday is, you have a little swig again and you test it out. And that's what I did with Sarah. That's what I recommended to Sarah, is that she, you know, keep checking in just to make sure she's getting enough iron and their iron recovery is going really well. And so that is really important. I don't use capsules for iron. And also I never use elemental iron, which is usually, it's a very cheap iron, and it's usually at the grocery stores. No, just plant-based liquid iron. It helps you check in with yourself. It helps you evaluate what your needs are, and it tells you when to stop taking it. Okay. And what I usually tell women is, try it and then ask your spouse or a male, someone who's significant, a male who's significant in your life, because they don't really struggle with anemia, and have them taste it and look at their face, because they're usually like, well, and Sarah did that with her husband. Sarah gave some to her husband. He was like, oh my God, that's horrible. And it's like, that's right. You don't need it. And that's kind of the point. It's just I said, it's a very good way to have a check-in. And that's what I want you to do, to use supplements correctly, to use nutrition correctly, and to get the best results. Okay. So I want to make sure also, just kind of, getting into these ideas of like, okay, I know that you all tolerate a lot, and like, oh, is it really severe? Da, 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 da. So let me tell you when you really need to be taking action. All right. So bleeding that's longer than 10 days. Okay. Because seriously, where are you going with that? It's not good. Okay. If you're changing a tampon every 1 to 2 hours, you are losing blood. Okay. You're not just sloughing the lining, right? That's what happens in our normal 5-day pattern, our 3 to 7 days. You're actually losing blood. Okay. If you're passing large clots regularly, that means the blood is pooling inside the uterus, and then it's clotting, and then it's releasing that clot with the weight. That's a lot of bleeding. And it's also a very important structural issue that's going on. Of course, if you're feeling dizzy, weak, or short of breath. This is possibly anemia. This is how Sarah felt, right? For a long time, and it just kept getting worse. This is how she could finally get it to recover, and then it happened again, right? So bottom line, if your bleeding is interfering with your daily life or making you unwell, do not ignore it. And again, please click subscribe. Look for where to place to put your email address so we can get information to you. If your period is lasting more than 7 days, okay, it's not something to brush off, okay? It's hormone, it's structural, but in any way, your body's asking for help. And it's a significant gyne issue, and it's not going to get better on its own. It's just not how the body works, because so many things are kind of making that happen, and it's kind of last resort stuff, okay? So the good news is, with the right diagnostics and the right work, right, you can shorten your cycles, feel better, and regain your energy. So you don't have to accept 8-day periods as normal. There are real answers, and you deserve them. Thank you so much for listening today. Please subscribe to the channel. Please share it with others. Please leave a comment. Tell me what you like, what you would like more of, and any way we can serve you. Thank you so much.